Well, hello everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live stream poetry podcast on the planet, in your ears, not on your laptops. Our guest for episode number 320 is Jeff McRae. He'll be here in just a few minutes, but before I get in, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this. We love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on that like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. Now, as always, we're going to start out with our Poet Respond poet, and we have a veteran. I believe this is the 18th time Abby E. Murray has appeared in Poets Respond. I think she is the current record holder. She took the crown a while ago and keeps running with it. Here she is, Abby Murray. Hey, Abby, how you doing?
Oh my gosh, 18. That's nuts.
That is, yeah. Well, I mean, you respond to the news in a very provocative, compelling, poetic way. And so we always appreciate that. Tell us what this poem, how the poem came to be. It's our second of two Thanksgiving poems we have this year, which is kind of unusual. We don't have that many poems in this series that are about the holidays. For one, because it's not Thanksgiving everywhere, and we have subscribers and readers all over the world. But the best poem always wins, and this was a great poem. We had two really good Thanksgiving-themed poems this week. So tell us where yours came from and why you wrote it.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised that you took it because there had already been a Thanksgiving poem. So I was like, oh, okay, so I'll get that rejection on Saturday. But I find Thanksgiving so bizarre. It's just such a strange holiday that we still kind of observe or practice. I mean, considering the myths that it's sort of built on. And so I feel like actually every year around Thanksgiving, I want to write about it just because it's so strange to like hold on the same holiday, land theft and gratitude and genocide and generosity. Like it's just really weird. They don't go together. So that was why I wanted to sit down and write about this. And I did end up writing about gratitude, which is kind of a funny thing. You can't force gratitude. So I really wanted to write about that.
Yeah, well, I think that Thanksgiving is kind of like, in the same way I think of Christmas, which is like, because I'm not really Christian, but I love Christmas. And it's like, the solstice has a thing we should celebrate, that the day is getting longer again, light returning from the darkness, and the darkest day of the year and all that is a wonderful thing. And having gratitude and giving thanks, for the harvest and for the bounty that is our lives is something to be grateful for too. I think it's a great reminder of that. But it is, both are kind of thorny for a lot of reasons.
And strangeness just lends itself so well. It's so appealing to poets, I think, to look at what is strange and be like, why is that so weird?
Yeah, well, let's hear this poem, The Problem with Gratitude.
Yeah. The problem with gratitude. It is the mind's youngest child, one of the most stubborn of human emotions. Gratitude obeys occasionally and often arrives late, inconspicuous as a heartbeat or insistent as a sob. It can turn a quick walk into 20 minutes of unabashed staring at the yellow leaves on a neighbor's tree, transform a glass of water into bliss. Gratitude has never fired a gun or met a dog it didn't love. It has a tendency to dwell, but also wanders. It gets lost. It has a hard time knowing when it's being lied to or knowing how to be refused. Gratitude has no patience for performance. You want it to hold still and be seen. It wants to fly your heart like a kite. Sometimes it ends up at your table even when you haven't made space for it. There it is, ignoring the recited prayer, waving at you with one black olive on the tip of each finger.
Yeah, I love that ending so much. Yeah, so fun. The Problem with Gratitude by Abby E. Murray. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Abby. It's a real pleasure always having you. Great to have you again on Poet Respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was Abby E. Murray once again. That was her poem that she submitted to Poets Respond. If you have your own poem about current events, anything that's happening right now, anywhere in the world, small local news stories, weird scientific discoveries, or the main events that everybody's talking about around the proverbial water cooler, which I guess is Facebook these days, anything you want to write about, if you want to respond to it in poetic form, all you have to do is go to rattle.com, find Poets Respond up there in the content, submit your poems by midnight Friday night, and we'll publish at least one on Sunday, and then you can join us here on a Rattlecast too. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest, Jeff McRae, so sit tight and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks so much for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Jeff McRae. Jeff's debut collection, The Kingdom Where No One Dies, honors the ache and beauty of ordinary life. A contributor to Rattle dating back to 2004, Jeff lives in Vermont with his wife and 3 children. He's worked as a fly rod builder, a digital marketing copywriter, a youth employment specialist, and for 15 years, a creative writing and literature instructor. An active musician, he also performs in theaters, clubs, and concert halls throughout New England. Most recently, he was in that Musician Poets issue, so that'll be fun to talk about at some point today. But here he is, Jeff McRae. Hey, Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, Tim. I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. It's a pleasure to have you on. I've been a fan. I don't know if you heard this, like listening last week or something, but I've been a fan of your work for such a long time, and your poem, Jeopardy, I remember fondly because it's the first poem I ever read in a submission that I liked.
Really?
Which it was very early on in reading submissions, like for the first time, 2004. And I came across that poem, Jeopardy, and I was like, wow, that is a poem I wish I could have written. And, and every poem thereafter that we publish is a poem like that. But it sits fondly. I think we might have nominated it for a Pushcart Prize or something. I really love that poem. And it was great to be able to publish that and publish you over the years, and also really happy to see that you have a first book out finally, The Kingdom Where No One Dies.
Let me tell you, there were lots of opportunities to give up and succumb to doubt over 25 years. It took 2.5 decades to get this son of a bitch out in the world.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about that process, but first let's hear a poem from the book, and we have queued up the very first poem from it.
Crowned?
Yeah,
this is a poem called Crowned. Crowned. There was music, but we meant magic. Magic of the tall grass and the open door, in our spells when we crossed the earth, noses in the smoke. We whistled, puckered up and stunned the birds with words we called urges. They lifted us. They filled us when we were face forward for the 50 things. Even falling down, they sounded like a crown of sonnets. How we got up over and over, majestically, looking over the edge of the bed, saying, I love, love, love you. Later, evening grew like a bruise. Then night swooped in, how you pull a lover aside and share the secret you've held so long it's become unreal. An ancient bell, a peal, a song, a sing along.
Yeah, so that was the opening poem to Jeff's new book, The Kingdom Where No One Dies, Crowned. So let's talk a little bit about that to start, Jeff. The long wait for the first book, and you've been a finalist for many awards over the years. Coming close to winning that one and getting the first book out. What was it like to keep going through that? How much did the manuscript? I imagine it was edited and changed over and over again over the years.
Yeah, it went through a lot of iterations. A lot of poems went in and were taken out and put back in, and the arranging of the poems by, I tried every conceivable arrangement. And then maybe 8 months ago, I don't know what it was, but it just all sort of clicked, and I thought, oh, this is now happening. I wrote a couple poems that seemed to tie it together by accident, and it all of a sudden got picked up. And that was awesome and a huge relief.
Yeah. Well, the publishing model right now is really, it's a difficult thing. The way that you have to sort of enter through contests. Like there are a lot of first book contests, fortunately, but there are a lot of poets and a lot of competition for those few slots, and it just keeps rolling and rolling with the submission fees. Do you have any concept of how many contests you entered over the years?
A lot, but I'm sure I spent a couple $1,000 easy on submission fees.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising because it's just that the entry fees really add up. So you mentioned it all clicking, and I assume the part of the click was the title. So can you tell us where that title came from and how you decided that you realized the book fit together in this way?
Yeah. So there's a section, an area in Vermont called the Northeast Kingdom, and it's sort of the most folkloric area of the state, and to me. And my grandparents had a farm up there, a small dairy farm, and when they retired, my dad took it over, and so we sort of like left the burbs and went to like the sticks, and I became a farm boy, and that's where my dad grew up, and it just, and over time, like all these farms went out of business, and so it's been sort of like the death of this kind of way of living, and it's sort of an identity of the state. And so, and then when I was in college, I remember this one time I told these people, yeah, I'm from the Northeast Kingdom, and they thought that was funny as hell, and they picked on me a lot, like, oh, you're from the kingdom, excuse me, my liege, and all this stuff. And so it's a word with a lot of different valences, and I knew I figured out that it was a nice metaphor too. So I spent some time one day looking up kingdom poetic references, and Edna St. Vincent Millay's poem about childhood being the kingdom where no one dies popped up, and I was like, well, that's it. And it really seemed to give everything meaning.
Yeah, well, definitely. Let's hear the next poem, Jeff.
Sure. Sitting on a hay bale. You wanted me to get a job, but I wanted to play my washboard. You were a respected mid-career professional with a reputation and a 401k, and I had my washboard and brief moments on the bandstand when all eyes fell on my thimbles, rattling out the flams, ratamacus, and polyrhythms. That's what we were, you and I. A pair of pulses that felt like they would never align, but always did, given time. You wanted to watch David Beckham on Netflix, and I shouted through the window, "Give me a minute to finish my concerto with these glorious backyard birds." You wanted happy children, as did I. I said so with my washboard hanging around my neck like a medal of honor, light as a lay. Between those syncopated sentences, I hugged it to my chest. I loved my washboard. It was Adam and I, the assembler of parts. Bell, cymbal, and body like the edge of a sculpture Michelangelo couldn't resolve. A figure unreleased from stone until I played, and all the barn doors of the past opened, and I seemed to sit on a musty bale with fiddlers and snakes speaking in tongues.
Yeah, another cool poem that is Sitting on a Hay Bale by Jeff McRae from The Kingdom Where No One Dies. Um, and you've done so many things. It's one of those really fun bios I like to read where there have been a lot of different jobs and things. And one of the things that's most interesting is that obviously you're a musician, being in that musician's issue. And it said on your bio to that issue that you do about 50 gigs a year, as a musician, as a sort of semi-pro. And it's drums that you mostly play, right?
Yep.
So,
yep.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, and I'm really curious. We've had other musicians on, but never drummers before, and I wonder how much that drumming relates to poetry. It seems like it's a little maybe different in a different way than guitar would relate to poetry. Because of the keeping time and the rhythm, and that goes into it. Do you think that alters the way that you write, or is there any relationship or overlap between the two?
Well, there must be. Language is inflected, and then drums are all about rhythm. So, I'm sure that in meter, language falling into artificially into meter, and that being something that you can manipulate. Yeah, I guess there'd be some crossover, but it's not something I'm really conscious of. I think it's more of an ear thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like the sense of rhythm as you write, is that a part of your process? Would you say because there is a cadence to so much of our just natural speech, and then falling into that is kind of where poetry is generated from very often.
Right. Yeah, I think that that's part of the process. It helps when you're sort of in that moment of composition, then you're sort of tuned into the, I hate this word, the flow of it, but that seems to help.
Yeah. Well, so give us a little bit more about your background in the different sort of areas you've pursued as a musician and a poet. Was that something you did growing up? Which did you fall in love with first?
Mm. I took drum lessons first, and my dad was a music teacher, and that was the teaching. He left to go do the farming, and then he went back to teaching. So I started out on drums, and I have this vivid memory of him being on the phone one night in the first grade telling somebody, well, I think he's a little young to take lessons. And then it turned out it was my best friend 2 houses down who wanted to take drum lessons. So because he did it, I did it. And so the drums came first. The poems came in the seventh grade do you remember that show, Murder, She Wrote?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it starts out with like the fingers on the typewriter and stuff. And I was like way into that for some reason. And so that got me like writing Angela Lansbury and Cabot Cove. And that just sort of evolved into poetry. And when I was a freshman in high school, I had some teachers who were like, I think, surprised that a jock like me wrote poems. And so that gave me a lot of courage to keep doing it.
Well, that is interesting that it's the typewriter, and then you as a drummer, you're like banging on the keys. I always think of, I love musicians who play the piano like drums. Like I love Ben Folds and things like that. Yeah. And playing poems like drums is really interesting too. Do you think there's a relationship between the two in that way, that it was the clanging? And do you still write on a typewriter at all?
I don't write on a typewriter. I write longhand almost exclusively. But yeah, I think that there's a relationship. There's certainly a percussive aspect to it. And my keyboard, my computer is a piece of junk, so like keys stick and stuff, so I can't get that nice rhythm going on my keyboard.
Well, let's hear the next poem up. Is Cognitive Dissonance, Jeff.
All right, Tim, you got a page for that?
That is 16.
Thanks. Cognitive dissonance. Jesus Christ, I just hit that fucking bird, I said, though the car was empty. It was that beautiful, whatever it was. Long, mottled white and brown, fanned out, straining to make it. A bird's brain is small. Its head made the tiniest thunk on the fender, and then it disappeared. No cloud of feathers, no tumbling wings on the road, no claw on the grill. For a second, just before it died, it was spectacular. That's how death should be. I was telling someone a NASA engineer brought a black tile in a bag to Mr. Morelli's seventh grade science class, just like the ones used on the Challenger, he told us, and blasted it with a torch, and the blue flame splayed across it like the wing of a jay. And then he pointed the flame away, our fingers stunned by the tile's hard cold. We put it together. The tile resisted the heat like nothing had happened, as though he never struck the match, igniting the gas, and the jet of flame never touched the tile. Something had happened. We saw it, but we could not believe. Morelli sat back like a cat that ate a bird. A week later, I was drinking milk in the hall with Scott and Jason when he hustled by. The shuttle just blew up. That was progress and industry and good government and science and education all at once. We knew it was a lesson about aspiration and how it can end up on the bottom of the sea. Morelli rolled the TV on its gurney to the front of class, and we watched the split-screen news. Sky scribbled with smoke. Students watching Krista McAuliffe vanish.
That was Cognitive Dissonance, another poem by Jeff McRae from his new book, The Kingdom Where No One Dies. So, Jeff, I'm curious more about the process that this manuscript can be put together. It is, I think, really informative potentially for a lot of people. So once there must have been so many poems that they're not included in the book, because you've been writing pretty consistently for decades. Is there a difference between the poems that did make it in and the poems that didn't, do you think? I mean, when the manuscript came together, you said it sort of all clicked. And I'm curious more about if there's any way you can articulate what it was that made those click versus other poems that are not in the book.
Well, I know that the poems that were in and that got taken out were just sort of repetitive, or they were, they restated a theme that had already been covered. The poems that seemed to tie it together were family poems. There's a lot of poems in here about family, of course, and they were about sort of my marriage as seen through the lens of sending our oldest kid off to college. There were a couple in there about that, and that really seemed to be a new perspective in the poems that brought it up to date, that maybe kind of was a nice bookend to all the early stuff about losing the farm or being a kid or whatever, that maybe kind of closed the circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and looking back through the poems, are there certain, I can't remember who said it, and I wish I could, but someone, I think it was a guest, said that every poet has a few obsessions, like a few things they keep trying to write about over and over again, and it's like they can't really shake it, and then finally, when you've gotten sort of a grasp on it and written all the poems you could, then that's a book. And what would you say, like, your obsessions are as a thinker? Like, what do you keep coming back to in poems?
Gee whiz. I think, becoming, a human being is like, that's it, right? Like everything else is just sort of tangential to that. And so all the poems are trying to express what that means in one way or another. I feel like, whether that's, through family history or whatnot, but But in terms of obsessions, geez, Tim, I really don't know. I'm obsessed with my kids. Like, I'm sure that they don't want me to be writing about them too strongly. And I try to write poems like you're saying, like there must be more connection between drums and poetry that I could do. And I know that they're there to be written, but I'm not sure how to get cracked. I'm not sure how to crack that surface because it's so close, and I'm like, it's like something I do rather than something I think about, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, so is the writing process, do you think it's a similar mental state playing the drums is writing poems? I imagine, I mean, I don't know. I always, I play guitar a little bit, but I always say like, I have a rhythm guitarist with no sense of rhythm is my problem. So, but it feels like there's some kind of space you get into when you're playing, which I can't really access. But it seems like it would be similar to like the flow state of creating poems. Is that is a place you go similar? To me, it's like the dissolution of self. Like you completely become unself-conscious in sort of rare moments in your life. Like so often we're so aware of like how we are awkwardly handling a situation and what we're looking like and what we're projecting. And, there's all these things, how our face is hanging, where our hands are. It's like, then when you get into that flow state, you completely forget and you completely lose your self-consciousness. And that feels like a drummer would be like the king of that. And, poetry seems to me one of the spaces I can do. The other is baseball. Like I could play shortstop. I'd dive into the hole and forget what I'm doing. And then I also know I threw the ball to first base. I don't even remember how I stood up. There's few moments like that. And it seems like drumming would be one of them, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's similar to like that white hot state that you can be in when you're writing, and it's just all flowing. I think Frost called it melting on ice melting on itself or something like that. There's just sort of an effortless movement there. But you're right. Like when you're playing, like for instance, I'm a jazz drummer, so like when you're on the bandstand, you're trying to achieve an egoless state, and yet make a comment at the same time, which is like a totally an ego driven thing. Charlie Parker talked about you learn all the rules and then you forget them and you just play. And I was thinking about that today in terms of poetry, right? Like it's like we go to graduate school and maybe you teach or you're an editor like yourself and you're just surrounded with poetry. But when you're writing, you're not thinking about all the rules and the history and all that. You're just kind of doing it, and it's just coming through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Brian O'Sullivan in the comments asked a question before we brought up, and I accidentally brought. Maybe I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but he says, I think I heard you say you hate using the word flow to talk about writing poetry. Is that the case? Do you? And if so, why? I'm curious.
Well, that goes back to my teaching days when. I think people just use the word flow to reference uninspected spirituality, and it's too easy for me.
Yeah,
but in terms of movement and language, then maybe it's totally appropriate.
Yeah. I think so much becomes an excuse not to work or try. I think maybe that's what you're getting at. Like if I was writing it from this pure spiritual place, then whatever I wrote down is amazing because it's my soul speaking on the page. And then, and I think that becomes a cop out for actually putting in work and making things make sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, I often think of Houston Smith, the guy who sort of like founded comparative religion. He had this phrase that the goal is altered traits, not altered states. And that to me implies hard work.
Yeah. Well, it definitely does. Let's hear another poem, and this one you brought because we should mention Billy Collins is the guest next week, and you have a Billy Collins poem, and this is it here, Coming Up Jesus. Speaking of flow states and things too, it kind of fits. Do you want to read this one?
Yeah. Apologies to Mr. Collins. Coming Up Jesus. Jesus had it going on for a good couple years, like Billy Collins. Followers who said, when he hit them with the perfect image. Event attendees who snapped their fingers and played bongos, who caught him up when he took the leap of faith, held him overhead, passing him person to person like something viral, a best of the net poem. Never did they let him fall. And just like Collins, they wanted to touch him, be near when he left the stage for drinks and dinner at the after hours hang with like minded locals. Jesus toured a solid year, playing small venues, Hilltop, outside town, tonight, growing his bass, hustling, honing his cadence, tightening his timing before hitting it big, always performing the same material but changing it up gig to gig, tweaks to make it new, keep his own interest, working out other angles on love. At first, reviews were few, but his reputation grew, and by what accounts remain, he killed, he slayed. Seekers arrived early and stayed late. Oh, sure, some nights they threw stones or soldiers cleared the olive grove. Even Billy wrote a stinker or two. For Jesus, parables were the glue for the whole show. Without them, he was just another weirdo standing in a river with a ragtag entourage. But there was no doubt the man was onto something, all au courant. All those feelings you didn't know you already knew and hadn't told a soul.
Man, that was Coming Up Jesus from The Kingdom Where No One Dies by Jeff McRae. Will you tell us about your process, Jeff? You mentioned already you write by hand. Are you the kind of writer who writes every day? Do you have any set ways that you go about approaching poetry, or is it catch as catch can?
I wish I was a lot more disciplined, than I am. And I feel like, I really admire these people who have like 10, 12 books, because now I finally understand that, the work and the consistency that goes into even writing 2 books, or even writing 1 book. So I'm catch as catch can for sure. And, life gets in the way. I've got 3 children and, I'm looking for a job, and just, there's pressure and all that sort of pressure of reality, I think Stevens called it, gets in the way of being creative.
Yeah. Does that serve as an escape then from the pressure of reality? I think, one of the times I liked writing most was when I was working like tough jobs, where it wasn't fun to be at work all day. And then I'd get home and I'd be tired. And, then sitting down and writing poems felt like such a break from all of that. Is that how you feel? Is it an escape to be entering that space?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess it can be. Back in my teaching days, I used to always sort of like roll my eyes at poets who said, if I couldn't write, I'd die, or my life depends on writing. That's what it is. And I was like, no, it doesn't. You know what I mean? Your life depends on food and water. But then I finally realized that, poetry is the way I understand the world, and it's how I make sense of things. So in that sense, my life does sort of depend on it. And because I feel like my life kind of depends on it in a certain kind of way, it's not necessarily fun. You know what I mean? It can be pretty intense, and it's like sometimes it's like something you got to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I used to feel like I used to write a poem every day, like years ago, and if I didn't, I felt like something was wrong, and there was this like, oh my God, I didn't write one yesterday. And once you break that, it becomes a little too easy to break, unfortunately.
Right. That's how I feel about Wordle.
Yeah. So tell us more about the different jobs that you've done over the years. I mean, some are really interesting, and do they affect the way you approach poetry at all? I mean, what was that one? A fly rod? I don't even remember what it was. A fly rod constructor or something.
Fly rod builder.
Yeah.
I built fly rods for. So when we got out of graduate school in St. Louis, my wife had a job at Bennington College, and that's Southern Vermont. So we came back home basically, and she started her job there, and I was casting around for something to do, and I got a gig at this company called Orvis, and they make fly rods, and their rod shop is up the road a little bit. So yeah, I was working second shift in the factory with a couple of graduate degrees, doing the factory thing, making fly rods at night, and It was a trip. Um, I don't know that it informed my my writing, but I'm sure it probably did somehow. I think it was just like a shock to be working in a factory after fancying myself, the next big, huge poetry professor.
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem. This is next up on page 26. Kurt Vonnegut stepped off the plane. This is one from Rattle too.
yeah. This poem is Kurt Vonnegut did come to UNH, and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, was the student group person, I think, who like shepherded him around. Kurt Vonnegut stepped off the plane, sipped from his flask, crossing the shoals, and my girlfriend drove him to campus. She was always involved with something, and I was involved with her, showing up at the studio Sunday morning when she painted her postmodern trees, followed her to the African textiles show. Stop trying to make yourself cry, she said when she dumped me. Vonnegut followed her around for the afternoon. She bought him ice cream with a couple dollars from the student group petty cash. They speculated about the age of the oak on the quad, all while he accepted small mouthfuls of praise. I broke out in hives. No poems, not mine nor those of Wordsworth, were going to bring her back. It was fucking over. Done. I didn't have a chance to play her the version of Moon River I'd worked up for our hump day movie night. Vonnegut took the stage in his stupor and rambled in and out of amplification, from poetry to the art of fame. It was about becoming, he explained at the end of his talk, trussing his dangling ideas, taking everyone's breath. Become a better person. Years passed. She wrote me an old-fashioned letter. I wrote back. We had 3 children. This morning, she told me the dog threw up on the rug last night. I descended the stairs, thinking even what you fling far away, like some primitive weapon, returns.
Yeah, I love that poem. That was Kurt Vonnegut stepped off the plane by Jeff McRae from his book The Kingdom Where No One Dies. And what I love about that poem, Jeff, so much, is it's one of the biggest, most fun turns in a poem. We talk about a poem going somewhere, but when you say she wrote me an old-fashioned letter, I wrote back. We had 3 children. Like that one sentence, fast forward like 20 years, it's such a fun leap to make. Do you remember the construction of that poem? If you wrote it out that way, or was this revision where you made that big leap? How'd that come to be?
I think that I was probably trying to like wrap it up and sort of fast forward to the end. This poem and the Billy Collins poem and Cognitive Dissonance and Jeopardy, like these, they all sort of, I don't know. I feel like these are the stronger poems in the book because they're the most complicated. They're trying to weave together 2 narratives at once, and I was definitely conscious of like, okay, this is going to be a Vonnegut line. Now we'll go back to this, and then you know what I mean, piecing it together like a puzzle, and it just kind of worked out.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's just great when poems have that sense of movement, and have somewhere to go that's surprising. And so those kind of things coming out just really make the poems sing off the page. And everyone's loving these poems too, by the way, in the chat, I should say.
Oh, actually.
There was a question. Let me go back up. Yeah. No, wait, that's the wrong one.
Can I jump in though, really quick?
Yeah,
about
go ahead.
movement in the poems.
Yeah.
Last week, was it Richard Gilbert you had on with the haiku?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he was talking about disassociative haiku and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, and I totally agree with that. And the ones with the big, really huge gaps in them, I could see, I was watching you, kind of be like, well, those are almost, the leaping is so big that it doesn't include me.
Mm-hmm.
But I was thinking that, like leaping poetry is not exclusive to haiku, right? Like, that's definitely a surrealist thing and a Robert Bly thing and a Charles Simic thing. And I think that you're right. Like that those leaps of association, Denise Levertov talks about that. And, just, leaping from one, coming down on the other side of the leap is what joy is in a poem, where it all kind of links together. I think that's that motion and kind of like compressing the narrative. I wrote back, had 3 children, that's part of it.
Hmm. Yeah, someone else calls it the rope-a-dope poems. Like that, like float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. It's like you think you're going one way, and all of a sudden, like the left hook out of nowhere, and there's just it's a great experience when that happens. It makes me wonder, like, do you know as you're writing where your poems are going? Do you have a sense? Because some poets do have a sense of the ending. I always compare it to, like, as a metaphor, like some poets, if you're hacking through like a path through the woods, you have no idea where you're going, and you're just like following the landscape, and you'll see what's there. And other people see some distant hill that they're trying to get to, and it's like hacking through the forest to get to that certain place. Which one would you say you are? Do you have an idea of where you're going or not?
I feel like for me, like when I'm just hacking away through the jungle, sometimes those poems of discovery can really work, but I like to have a subject in mind. And for me anyway, like a poem where that discovers its own subject along the way tends to be less coherent than but on the other hand, I totally object to like knowing where you're going to end up. There has to be surprise for the writer. I feel
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see where we are. Let's do another poem, The Song Inside, on page 53.
53, thanks. Yeah. So can I talk about this poem for a second?
Yeah, please do.
So one of my favorite short stories I used to teach was Sonny's Blues by James Baldwin. And it basically tracks, I don't know if you're familiar with that story. Everyone should be. This kid who's like he's got this really square military brother, but he wants to be a jazz pianist, right? And so the story sort of tracks like his heroin addiction and his sort of developing his chops and practicing and becoming obsessed with art, and then how the artist is the stand-in for everybody's experience. And I realized that there was something about Star Wars that was similar to, and Luke's whole chasing his dad, that seemed similar. So I thought that, again, that was like a poem that was going to weave these two things. The Song Inside. You remember? Luke sees Leia in the real first movie while he's hanging out in the garage setting up his horn. And she pops out the robot, and he's like, dang, she's hot. And she's all, save us, Obi-Wan. Before he seriously shed chops, before dedication, boring as a desert. Soon he's wondering whence this song inside, and what exactly is the real story about his pops, Bop Killer who smoked everyone on the bandstand. Just legend? Legend doesn't satisfy the drive to master mystery. Meeting a father is epic. A father gives his son what he knows and may even reveal secrets only guilt caused by love can occasion. He'd remove the mask, uncover Anakin, purveyor of smooth jazz. Mythology is bloodied by adults who can't play together. But father and son would maneuver through any lingering dissonance over a couple of gigs, trading fours, shoving and pulling against each other's time. Luke all, no, man, this is how we do it now. And Vader like, join me. Someday, the young Jedi might pull the horn from his mouth and listen.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That was The Song Inside by Jeff McRae. I'm really cool overlapping those two things, jazz and Star Wars. Yeah. So the question that came up before, it was Laura B. Oh, that's Laura Berg. She says, I'm wondering how the physical world there in Vermont influences your writing, and do you consider yourself a regional poet in some sense? And I'd say, reading through the book, so many of the poems do take place very specifically in that region. The title nods toward that too. So do you think of yourself as like a poet of place, a regional poet?
Yeah, I do. This guy on the cover is a Vermont painter. He's a Vermont artist. I do. It's just I have a accent of a Vermont accent, or I used to anyway, and all my family, both sides of my family, come from the same small town up in the Northeast Kingdom, and went to high school, it's just like they went to high school together, three brothers and three sisters, like we're all like this through the grades. And yeah, I definitely consider myself a regional poet. My wife even directs one of the Robert Frost houses here in Shaftesbury, which is the town next door over. And when I went to Wash U, Mary Jo Bang, the poet, was her first year there, and she in the very first time one of my poems came up for a workshop, in her workshop, she ripped it to shreds and was like, "This is too much like Robert Frost." And I must have been so shocked, because this girl, this woman from the afterwards was like, "Are you okay?"
Well, that's a good topic to talk about. What has your experience been in the programs you've been in? Getting I think you have an MA and an MFA. Yeah. And where did you learn the most? And if somebody's looking to, that's a question we get all the time. It feels to a lot of people like if you don't have an MFA, you're like out in the cold, and everybody has one almost, and so you sort of need one. Did you feel that way? And do you feel like you learned a lot in those programs? And if so, what is the thing that you learned that mattered the most?
Yeah, I felt like I learned a lot, good and bad. When I was getting the MA, I'm so embarrassed to say this, Tim, but I thought I was getting an MFA. So I you can imagine my shock at UNH when I ended up with an MA in writing. They now have an MFA. But Charles Simic was the poet there at the time, and McKeel McBride. And Charlie Simic made, poetic achievement and fame and success just look normal. It was I got totally faked out by that. I didn't realize that wasn't the norm, which I definitely found out. When I found, the MFA was great because, like any grad program, you're surrounded by people who are interested in what you're interested in. Carl Phillips at Wash U had a really academic, intellectual approach to poetry. His prosody class that I took, I ended up drawing on in my own teaching, and I still think about it, 25 years later. So all that stuff was great. Unfortunately, they invented the PhD in creative writing, which kind of obviates the MFA as a meaningful degree. At least in my experience, that's what happened. And, that sucked.
Well, we talk about this sometimes with, I think Bob Hickok was one we were talking about with, but the whole MFA system is sort of, pyramidal in structure, we might say. Everybody's trying to climb to the top of this pyramid, and there's these rungs, and there's so many people in the rungs trying to climb up to be the one at the top, and you're putting in your dues. And, and I think, I don't know, there's sort of a resentment that I feel myself too, when you think about just the way it was presented as a path, like a sustainable path, in 2000, like 25 years ago for me, where you could get a job teaching somewhere. And then there's a way that it's spread out through, well, adjuncts fill in that, where there's so many jobs, we'll just make them all adjuncts and no one's tenure track. And then even those are sort of going away. There's just this, glut of poets and just writers. And it feels like a trap almost. I mean, speaking of Star Wars, that meme popped in my head. We're like, it's a trap, with the guy. And there's a way that it kind of is if you're focused on some kind of goal at the end, like you're going to have some career, but then it's so worth it to have a community surrounding you at the same time. So do you regret that path at all, or are you happy that you went through all of it?
When I ultimately, I don't regret it because I paid off the loans. But I was the only person in my program at Wash U who was not on a free ride. So that built up a lot of resentment for me, and I could not figure out why that was. And thank you, Joe Biden, though, for forgiving the rest of my loans. You know what I mean? And that worked out. I learned a lot. You're right, though. Like the whole MFA thing is like a money-making, it's like a business now. And I feel like a lot of the Substacks and stuff online where you're constantly hitting paywalls, everything's been monetized and everything's like a marketing, SEO seems to be driving, like, their clickbait H1s, and it just seems like it's going in the wrong direction in a way.
Yeah, well, it definitely is. But speaking of that, though, you also worked in marketing at one point. Do you? I mean, it's really interesting to me that the way poems sometimes go viral. Like sometimes poems do get shared over and over again. And as an editor of Rattle, I have access to all this data. I can see which ones kind of take off, and you can really easily sort of at least invent the reasons why. And it's interesting because it's like attention is the currency of the modern age. There's so much. It's the age of abundance, especially in like the digital space, which is where we kind of half live now. Everything is super abundant, and so just having attention is like the currency that we need, to do anything, to have books and have a few copies be sold and to have poems that a few people read. It requires attention. And did you find in that marketing experience anything that you can like help with poetry? I mean, the book just came out a few weeks ago. Have you been doing anything yourself toward marketing that you might recommend other people do?
Yeah, I've been trying to, sort of seed my socials as much as I can with, photos and little videos. And I don't really know like how to, what to do beyond that, the basics. Marketing was such a cesspool of content creation. You know what I mean? It was really disgusting, full of plagiarism, and it was like the Wild West, pumping stuff out. I learned some techniques, I guess, in terms of like, SEO stuff, but that whole technique, and those rules are always evolving, and I'm sure what I knew about 5, 6, 7 years ago is obsolete.
Yeah, it's really hard to keep up, and even looking, in real time at like what's happening. It's like we have some years at Rattle that are like big years, and then you look back at what it was that was taking off, and sometimes it's things is just the fact that we had poetry is mostly Democrats, and there were a lot of like Facebook promoting sort of people sharing each other's posts with political events, but we had I think that had a lot to do with a lot of success in certain years, which is really strange, and there's just no way to tell what's going on. And I don't know. It's just fascinating to try. You write great poems, but to try to get them in front of people is very difficult sometimes.
Yeah, it's impossible. I mean, I didn't think that my book would ever get picked up because, it's like, who wants to hear poems by another middle-aged white bald guy from New England? You know what I mean? And so, but it happened. Pulley Press, who is out of Seattle and Washington. They're awesome. Pay attention to them. Pulley Press. They're small staffed and they're out there killing it as hard as they can, but you're right. Like, it's all about attention. So I'm super thankful to you for having me on, I mean, that's a big, huge deal. And I don't know how you guys, like, Rattle is just like killing it. You guys are like it's like you guys in poetry, you know what I mean? It's like, you must be so proud of this thing that you're, this big poetry behemoth that you're running.
Yeah, we definitely are. And that's a perfect time to say, if you're enjoying the Rattlecast, please do click the subscribe button on YouTube. We are only, I think, a couple hundred subscriptions there away from Poetry Foundation's channel and passing them, which will be the first time we actually pass them in something. I should also remind everybody, too, that if you haven't clicked the like button yet, please do, because there's always more than twice as many people watching live as have clicked like yet, and that helps poetry spread around the internet even more, because how the algorithms, at least the old-fashioned ones, work, I don't know what they do with the AI anymore, but with the old-fashioned algorithms, the more people click on something, the more it thought people might want to see it. And then if you click on it, more people will see it because it'll show it to more people. So make sure you do that. Also, tell your friends to watch and tell your friends to buy our issues, buy Jeff's book. We just have to get talking about poetry and not be shy about it either. I think that's an important part of everything. And I should say, too, if anybody has any questions for Jeff, leave them in the chat windows. Helps if you put question all in bold so I can see it. And I'm happy to pass anything along. We've got 2 poems left to share, Jeff. Do you want to read Taking Our Son to College in the Morning?
Sure. This is one of the ones that I felt like it just sort of came in at the last second, and I felt like tied it together, tied the collection together. Taking our son to college in the morning. The storm gathered hundreds of miles away in a strange part of the world, but the weather map projected a path over our house. We knew someday we'd sing the final melody from our little nest, knew our last good night and good morning would arrive. We were too old to be surprised, but there we sat, side by side on the couch, in disbelief, listening to the rain and a bird call from the dark.
And I was taking our son to college in the morning, again, from Jeff McRae's new book. Jeff, do you remember the first poem that you ever loved? That's one thing I always like to hear. Do you remember? I mean, for me, it was the Wallace Stevens, the Snowman, and and that was the first one. I read some Frost, but then Stevens sort of I realized there was like another level. When I read that. Do you have a poem like that was the first one you sort of, I don't know, knew that poetry was something special because you'd read?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Frost and then you graduated onto something else, because the first poems that I used to really love were the early Frost, when he was still sort of Victorian and super drippy. There's one that keeps talking about rain fresh goldenrod. I remember that poem really, I thought, was so beautiful. But Proof Rock was the first poem that really sort of blew me away, and there was just so much evident craft, and it was so hip and streetwise and beautiful and athletic. I just loved that poem. I still love it, obviously. And so, yeah, Proof Rock.
Yeah, definitely. That reminds me, we got to do a whole episode on Proof Rock for the Poetry Space with Katie. That's one of the things that we plan on doing, because it's a gateway poem for so many people, and it because it's sort of maybe like a turning stone or turning point into the modern way of confronting poems, you might say.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So why we talked about drumming and the rhythm, and yet you write poems, and you talked about writing in form early on, but most of your poems now are in free verse. So I'm wondering, why that is. First of all, why not write in more formal meters? And also, there was a question earlier, which I sort of saw, about why you chose, I think it was with the Vonnegut poem, why that was in couplets. So I'm wondering, both why the free verse? Do you lean toward that when you've been talking about Frost and things like that? And also, just how do you construct the poem on the page? How do you make it? How do you think about the way it's going to look and feel?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is to do with pacing. I'm working on a poem right now that kind of is it's going in quatrains. I'm trying it out in couplets and then as a monostiche, and I'm trying to figure out how much air it needs. How white space is handy for speed. I don't want it to be too clunky. And then writing in traditional forms, man, that's just hard. That's hard to do, and it's like I may not be that good. You know what I mean? It's like life is short, and I think that we've, at this day and age, society isn't reflected in traditional forms anymore. I really like sort of Bly's and Donald Hall's notion of sort of following the echoes, the phonic echo of vowel sounds, and using other structures like that to kind of knit a poem together. I think that there are other ways of doing it.
Yeah, well, you definitely have a lot of internal rhymes in your poems. That's one of the things that sort of stand out, and they kind of hit you on the side a lot in these poems. One more thing I wanted to ask about was just what poetry do you read these days? What do you find yourself really enjoying outside of your own work? I'm sort of on a quest to find what I'm missing, and I feel like there's so much missing. It's the world is so vast with poetry. And there's so many things, even as an editor, with thousands of submissions coming in a week or more. I mean, you only see this little sliver of it, and I only see the journals I see. I only see the books I happen to see. There's so much out there. So what have you been reading?
Oh, I knew this question was coming. I Ada Limon is the poet I've been reading lately, and Maggie Smith, both of
Mhm.
those two. But Ada Limon is, I hope I'm saying her name right, is is I've been really sort of diving into her for the last year maybe.
Mhm.
I've got a few of her books scattered around the house.
Yeah. Um, and how did the like when you were teaching poetry,
Mhm.
did you find that certain poems resonated more with your students? And is that something that you were sort of aware of, like who to put on your syllabus and things like that?
Well, I think that anything that is really imagistic works for them. So, like, sort of Charlie Simich's object poems, his early stuff, that always seemed to people really tuned into that, and that was useful for talking about imagery. Um, Things with animals, like John Updike's poem about the dead dog. That's great for talking about tone control and then sort of like proof rock again is great for talking about managing your line and image and pacing and even irregular rhyme and how to like write a longer poem and organize it without sort of being boring people to death.
Hmm. Um, well, we're gonna wrap it up with one more poem, but first, what is your now that this book is out, do you have other manuscripts going? Like, what are you writing now? Are you putting something together in a different direction? I mean, what's next after this? I know it just came out, but
Yeah. No, I want to do a manuscript that's more about being a musician and sort of using that as a metaphor.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah,
I play with a lot. I play Dixieland, and so it's like the guys I play with are all like very old, and so just I learn a lot from them, and so watching how they do their business is really instructive to me, and yeah.
well, that sounds like a fascinating topic. I'd love to hear more poems. I love poems about anything I don't really know a lot about. Where you can really
Right.
get in it and you feel like you know it better. And that kind of thing is something. All the old guys playing Dixieland is something that I have no experience with. So I would love to read in the future. Um, yeah, well, looking forward to that. Let's close out with the last poem. And this is that Jeopardy poem we mentioned at the top. It was the first poem I liked reading submissions, and I'm excited to hear it. You read it in person, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks. And again, Tim, thanks for having me on. I really value it.
Yeah, definitely my pleasure.
Jeopardy. And for those who don't have the poem in front of them, this sort of uses like the show Jeopardy, like the little device, the questions. Jeopardy. What if, when we are old and have lost interest in our children and things scholarly, we become what we strove so hard to avoid, comforted by routine, scheduled by television? What is the morning coffee you brewed while I slept? Who is the woman who suffered my abuse? What are conditions of indebtedness? And when we cease using our names, or your health causes an address to God who never crossed the threshold of our house, what is I will not die first? Who is the one most likely to bear remaining days? We'll know the beauty of a breath. One need only feel the air to know what lies within the corpse colored clouds. Then forgetting begins, where you left your glasses on your head, forgetting when we first met, the night I lit myself on fire, forgetting your flawed iris, hair across the tile. Rain rolls through the deltas of sand on the bank of Menfor before joining the lake. What is an evening of opposites? Who owns this lilac-scented letter? What are brief songs? Until then, we live with small amounts, with want, a list of questions for which we deserve no answer.
And that was Jeopardy by Jeff McRae from his new book, The Kingdom Where No One Dies. Jeff, thanks so much for being a guest today. It was like I said, it was a pleasure talking to you, get to know you and your work better after reading you for all these years. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, once again, that was Jeff McRae. You can find Jeff's book, The Kingdom Where No One Dies at pulleypress.com. That's Pulley press.com. That's The Kingdom Where No One Dies, Jeff's book. Then we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to write an ode to something personal to you without it becoming a personal poem. So we'll talk a little bit about what we mean by that, but that's the prompt for this week. If you have a poem that fits an ode to something personal while still being a poem, feel free to submit it or share it on the prompt lines. To do that, the first thing you do is email your poem to promptlines@rattle.com. That's promptlines, all one word, at rattle.com. Then find the Zoom link, which is about to deploy on Facebook and YouTube. Join the Zoom, but only if you have a poem that fits this week's prompt. And also, make sure you're cognizant of the time. We want a 1-page max on poems and also a 3-page limit on just being on camera because we want to make sure we get to enough time for everybody. I want to see my kids before they go to bed. So make sure you be aware of the time you're taking up. But we do love to hear from everybody who has something to share. So sit tight and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. I'm here with our associate editor, prompt lines editor, and my wife, Katie Dozier. Somebody named Katie. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I really enjoyed that conversation and getting to hear the Kurt Vonnegut poem and the story of it being totally true and everything was great too. I've always really liked that poem.
Yeah, that is one of those, so often you'd be disappointed if to know a poem's not true, even though we're champions of the imagination.
Yes,
it's totally fine to write poems. Just lie to us and pretend it's true.
Right,
anyway.
But that one would have been a bummer. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the prompt this week was to write an ode to something personal to you without it becoming a personal poem. By which we mean, there are all these poems, especially love poems, or the number one poem in that genre, I'd say, where it's like you have to know the situation and the relationship and stuff to appreciate it as a poem. And that's the danger with writing about personal things. Mm-hmm. So why did you pick that as the prompt, Katie?
And this particular one came because it was something I saw even a disproportionate amount of as a problem in reading submissions in the last month. And so I thought maybe it would be helpful to have kind of this reminder that so much of what we're doing in poetry, of course, is taking something that's universal and making it personal, and the opposite too. So just reminding us too that objects that are personal can be universal. So. Mm-hmm. Yeah, or hopefully can be. Well, I say right before I read my poem.
Okay, and your poem is this Ode to the Clock.
Yeah, and speaking of the clock, I should read it because it's a lot longer than my normal poem.
Oh, okay.
Ode to the Clock. There isn't much time, so let's be clear. Perhaps there's no polite way to say it anyway. You are a broken cast iron snail clock. See, it sounds salty. You are the heaviest whirl. You are another blunt object populating this overcrowded world. You are a metaphor that cannot move. Even when I rescued you from footfalls at an auction house, your hands weren't revolving. Before you, I believed that glass itself was afraid of breaking. I don't know if you ever kept time locked in the spiral of your endless shell, or if your inability to tick has been exactly the point this whole sundialed time. Perhaps it's like how I laugh at someone else's jokes, which I once believed were mine. $42 later, you've been the most loyal pet, never having left the side of my desk. You even seem to love free verse, despite your biological need for a foot. I stare at you between the lines, wondering how you would look with a smiley face struck on by an increasingly shaky Sharpie. If it isn't rude, I must ask why a rusty bolt erupts from the top of your shell. I suppose the rumor is unlikely to be true, that you were once a 20-pound necklace for Flavor Flav. That was Jeff Stumpo I thought of when I wrote that line. Sorry. Lately, I count your coils and wonder if time is linear. But no alarm buzzes from your antennae. I know you're not a magic 8-ball. But when I set a vase of red zinnias down beside you, no one can deny this. I watch you ripple towards the blooms.
Oh, I love that ending, Katie. And that is the second poem that we have about the snail clock, because you did the haiku also.
That's true. I should have brought. I feel bad I didn't bring him in. It's
Aw,
all about
poor
him
guy.
moving, and he misses his big cameo.
Well, it's interesting. This prompt reminds me of, we have an issue of Rattle called Tribute to the 20-Minute Poem. Do you ever see that one?
I did not, which feels weird that I have not.
Yeah, that was issue number 19 before I was here. And what it was just a workshop thing that Stella Sully, the former editor of Rattle, did, where she would make you take any item within the room and write a poem about it. And you had 20 minutes, and that's what she did.
Oh, that's funny.
And so all these poems she knew were 20 minutes because they came from those workshops.
Oh.
And it's just something. And so I was going to write about this. This is my Buddha statue. I'm just holding it up for people to see, but I don't have a poem.
Experience.
Yeah.
And then when I came into Tim's office just now, I was like, well, I know what you wrote your poem about, but apparently it was not that.
Yeah.
And this says, we used to do a somewhat similar exercise from Barbara Hamby at Florida State, because she's, writes amazing odes and had us think, like, you can write an ode to anything. Mine's kind of an anti-ode that becomes an ode, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's true. It's a great exercise. And then making it universal is the thing that makes it work. But yeah, I started to write poems, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm kind of under the weather a little bit. I'm hopped up on Dayquil and throat coat tea.
You're telling all the secrets.
Yeah, telling all the secrets. But
the cold is coming into my
something
own
weird
voice.
happened where I started to write two separate poems. And both, I had too much brain fog, and I was like, this poem is not as good as it should be. I'm going to write about something I care about.
I did the same thing. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I had a false start too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And so I have two, and I'm set those aside to actually write later, because I'm not capable of it at the moment. I can't hold a thought long enough.
I
But anyway,
believe in you. You're doing great.
so maybe if you follow us on Facebook, on Timothy Green and Katie Dozier, we post our poems all the time.
We do.
Also, our chapbook, Did You See the Moon, Honey? Just out. Might as well plug it. Talking about using our social media with
We
Jeff.
are trying to do that. It would be nice to sell more than two.
It would, yeah. Anyway, whatever.
Whatever. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't have a poem, but I will. I post it when I finish reading it as soon as the brain fog lifts.
Okay. That could be
Okay.
the title of the poem.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Well, anyway, let's see who we've got to share poems. Let's start first. Well, you mentioned Jeff Stumpo. Let's start with, and he gave a sort of finger gesture, like your
Hopefully it
Flavor
wasn't the
Flav
middle
comment.
finger.
It was not. It was
No,
I agree.
like a hey, yeah.
It was like a hey, yeah, exactly.
That's better. That's good. A finger gesture in my life has often meant something different.
The finger gesture began with Flava Flav and me like, yes, I get that. And then
Nice.
you shouted me out.
It was.
Yay.
It was really funny though. Literally, as I was writing, I was like, "This is me channeling Jeff Stumpo. Flava Flav has entered my poem."
And my poem tonight is, I think, channeling one of the staff/hosts at Slam Free or Die, a teacher named Christopher Kloss. Which although I wrote this in like the 10 minutes waiting for the thing to start because I didn't see the prompt until then. And it begins with this mug.
Nice.
When you find the thing And I am not saying it has to be a coffee mug older than your only child that you found in a little shop in a little town on a trip you took halfway across the country, not to get that mug, of course, but because you and your spouse needed to take a trip and you didn't need that mug or whatever that thing is. For you, the thing is that you never needed that thing you found or thought you never did, but inevitably you found it, which is to say, looking back, there it was, exactly where it needed to be, like how your keys are in the last place you look for them, or your child growing into some person you hadn't looked for, and now you couldn't live any other way.
Yeah, love those straight through one breath
Yeah,
poems.
I love it when you
yeah.
can tell it was written fast and in a fervor.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
great.
really cool stuff. Thanks for sharing
Yeah,
that, Jeff.
thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, it was Jeff Stumpo with When You Find the Thing. All right, next let's go to none other than Dick Westheimer.
Hello.
Hey, Dick, great to see you.
Good to see you. I'll jump right into this after I say I really appreciate the discipline on time. I was recalling the Skype days when you couldn't fit all of us in. And this just feels so much more inclusive and we get out on time and it's terrific. On that note, I will jump in.
Okay.
Ode to my granddaughter. She's every 4-year-old who grabs a Lego brick from her brother, who feels the earth is flat and the only 2 dimensions are her and her desires. After drowning in a 2D puddle of tears, she stops and pops into 3D and asks, as if reciting a litany, why is Poppy's hair gray? What are the holes in the floor upstairs? Is that where the monsters live? She is the shape of the entire cosmos, an expanding creation of questions and dark moods. She puts her hands on her hips, slipped to one side like she's seen on TikTok, and says, Poppy, 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 until I stop washing dishes and look her way. The Z-axis of her world is growing, but still stops at the top of her head, which is now tipped back as she grabs a wooden spoon as a microphone and belts, I'm done hiding, now I'm shining like I'm born to be, from a movie she's seen a dozen times. We are commanded to line up chairs and watch the show. She gets her big brother and sister to the stage and tells them their parts. After a round of applause, she climbs up in my lap, puts her head against my chest as I read Goodnight Moon to her for the 5th time today. I tell her I know the universe is big because it has to be to contain her. After dinner, we read the book again, and she rubs her eyes with her balled-up fists and falls asleep, and I can see her dreams bending the fabric of space and time nearly as much as this only blue and green planet we know. The Earth orbiting a question.
Yeah.
Great haiku. Yeah, that's really nice. I feel like your granddaughter's really lucky. It makes me envious my grandfather didn't write poems. To have this about her is really special.
Yeah, it definitely is, Dick.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.
See y'all. Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
It was Dick Westheimer with Ode to My Granddaughter. Really sweet poem. Let's go to Amanda Harris.
Right. I think this is like the second week in a row I've been third, so that's kind of cool. Yeah. So I ended up talking about my childhood imagination. I guess that was the only thing I could think of an ode for. Okay. A regime with no king. The regime with no king, born out of an anarchist need to both question and usurp. Grow thorns in the shape of questions, and questions in the shape of thorns. There is only blank space in this regime, says Susie, the 8-year-old who imagined this regime out of grape juice and fairy dust. Blank space governs the minds of small children. That is the secret children keep from imaginary kings and parents. The latter a kind of villain to everyone but Susie. In Paradise Lost, it says to love your tiny devils. Actually, It doesn't, but that does not mean Susie cannot tug on mythical underwear and call it fact. Facts are strange things invented by kings. Kings, like small children, grow fangs.
Very nice, cool ending. That was
Yeah.
a regime with no king. Yeah, thanks so much for
Thanks,
sharing that, Amanda.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's Amanda Harris. And next, let's go to Brian O'Sullivan.
Hello.
Hey,
Hey,
Brian.
Brian.
We had a brief cat cameo, but there's
yay,
the tail.
cat.
Yeah, the cat's not leaving me alone today.
Aw.
Okay. I have it fairly long, so I'll start.
Okay.
I said on Facebook that I think this is a non-bun because it's a poem that makes you think it's going to have a haiku at the end of it, but it doesn't. But it is Ode to Hollywood. No, not that one. Not Hollywood. Intensely placed with the concrete footprints and the big sign and the bigger egos. Not even Hollywood, Maryland, with its big houses a few miles up Route 5 from here. No, I mean you, a little patch of holly trees overhanging our humble condo's balconies. I'm not a plant guy, and when we first moved in, I asked Jen what those trees were with the leaves like vinyl sprinkled with spherical blood drops. Holly, she said. And it was as if she just roasted holiday chestnuts. And still on gray days, your drops of fire light me up a little. I always look at you and think I should write a haiku, though it hasn't quite come. Once during COVID, I saw a little family of deer within your woods. The mom and dad dashed away, but the little one lingered a moment, looking lost. I thought about how lost they really were, looking for food in the shallow strip between two parking lots. Another time, I looked within you and saw the red light of an ambulance by the luxury apartments and a thin old man being hurried out on a stretcher. I wish the patient and the deer could just be idly looking at you and feeling their own haiku moment coming on. But I love you most when there's a fire on and a Swiss miss at hand, and Jen and I are holding hands, looking out the window, watching your woods fill up with snow, and seeing forever.
Aw.
Yeah, very sweet ending. The
Yeah.
humor moving into that. Another rope-a-dope poem there as well.
Yeah, that really is sweet. And it's interesting, too, because somehow if you'd had a haiku at the end, it would feel too neatly wrapped.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a great one, but I decided not to put it in for that reason.
It was brilliant.
It was too beautiful.
Yeah, it was too good.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, thanks
Thanks.
for being here. Yeah, it was Brian O'Sullivan with Ode to Hollywood.
Not Hollywood. Sorry.
Next, let's go to Nivedita.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi.
Hey.
Hey, great to see you.
Hi, Peter. So, my poem is really kind of short, and I wrote it based on physics because I was like, I know I'm somehow in a physics frame of mind currently, and all the books I'm reading are based on that. So I just decided to go with the flow, as they say.
Well, that's interesting. I'm sure
Neat.
Dick Westheimer will love it too.
Yeah, neat.
Yeah.
It's kind of exactly along his speed with space time and quarks and all of that. So yeah.
Very cool.
And
Well, let's hear
surprisingly, he mentioned space time in his poem today as well. So,
it. Great. Yeah, well, let's hear it, Nivi.
Ode to the Invisible Architects. Beneath the veneer of what we see, there lurk unseen architects, quarks and leptons weaving the fabric of everything that is, was, and will be. They dance in silent symphony, their motions a language older than words, building galaxies from whispers, sculpting atoms into the universe's blueprint. No fanfare greets their existence, no banners wave for their deeds. Yet, in their delicate choreography, the cosmos finds its rhythm, its story. From the spark of the Big Bang to the spark of consciousness, they are the quiet builders, the fundamental poets of reality. They are the unseen artisans of all that endures.
Yeah, well, really interesting. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that,
Yeah,
Nivi.
thanks, Nibby.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah, you too. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was Nivedita Karthik with Ode to the Invisible Architects. And let's see. Next, we'll go to Carla Schwartz.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Carla.
Hi, Carla. Great to see you.
Nice to see you guys and to be here tonight and to hear what I thought was a pretty good Vermont accent. And yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a Vermont accent until he was talking it too.
Oh my God. Especially if you're from the Northeast Kingdom.
Uh-huh.
And when I lived in Vermont, they said 5 generations. If you're not 5 generations, you're a flatlander, so. Okay.
That's funny.
Anyway, it's called, my ode is an elegy. Our Collective Grief, for Charles Coe. The problem with being friends to all is when he dies, when we learn through the offhand insta-scroll of his being gone, such an oxymoron, of his isn't-ness, as he was so much more than that, more than just a man. We can't grieve alone. In one poem about grief, he urged, climb from the wreckage. Oh, Charles, there is no wreckage of you, only a wreckage of us, a landscape we must learn to stand in, to scramble up from, one in which your humor, your wisdom, the warm soup of you, swallowed up in an instant, as if by a sinkhole. All we can do with our tears is sing, cry out, and one day, we hope, like you would have, find the perfect punchline to a joke about how much we miss you. Reading your poems, our breath on the window.
Oh, that was a beautiful haiku, especially at the end. Very touching poem. Thanks so much for sharing that, Carla.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, it was Carla Schwartz with Our Collective Grief. And as I see, Katie had to step out for a second, or hopefully she'll be coming back. But Charlotte is in a mood today, let's say. So hopefully Katie can come back. But let's go next to Laura Berg.
Hello.
Hey, Laura, great to see you.
Well, I started with a real object, but my grandfather's cricket cage, but I ended up just imagining by the end. I just imagined something else. Okay.
Yeah.
So, brass cage, door unlatched. Why did great Aunt Nina breed canaries in the noisy sunset of her room? Was it that empty time in life? It can seem too much, this illusion of choice, how to fill each remaining minute. From the top of a cage she kept, and I keep, brass strands curved down in helixes stamped with lily dots. Brass parrots watch the open door. Brass camels circle round the base. Rosemary decorates a ledge, shed feathers caught in its dry sprigs. A real bird must have lived here. Did it leave as one might leave a country? Choice. A word that traces back to taste, how we peck at things. And then there's the way we get tangled in our own DNA. Even our languages net us as if we were playthings, make us sing. Can I even be here if I've left?
Well, another beautiful poem. I love that detail about choice being a word that traces back to taste. That's really fascinating, Laura.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. It was on Laura Berg with Brass Cage, Door Unlatched. Next, let's go to Matt Joseph.
Hi there.
Hey, Matt.
How's
Great to see you.
Great, yeah. So I think I failed at doing an ode, and I failed at making it a personal poem that isn't a personal poem, but I attempted. So, anyways,
well, that's the effort is what matters. As long as you finish it, because I didn't share it because I didn't finish it. We can't start doing non-finished poems, I guess. But besides for that,
all right,
it is the effort that counts. Yeah, let's hear it.
Thanks, man. Jump in. All right. Skydiving. When I jumped from that plane in my mid-20s, mid-med school. Okay, I'll level with you since we're sharing secrets here. I didn't jump, more like fell, boneless chicken style, alternately screaming and throwing up all the way down once my chute mushroomed overhead. And as impressive as that sounds, you should have seen it in person. It wasn't because I wanted to die, this vomitous, squealing jump fall. But I also didn't not want to die. The way I'll be almost awake at 4 a.m., but there's still some dreaming in the tank, tugging at my untucked shirt, asking if I really want to be a doctor today, to dive into a stream of souls cracking their chests to show me where it hurts, when I could keep swimming through a sky filled with dolphins sharing their deepest thoughts on a Radiohead song that doesn't exist. The answer always seems to be yes. But the question is, what's the question? I'll take undecided for 200, Alex. I want to be the one who doesn't just touch the cut, but brings the bleeding edges together, who doesn't simply hear the crying out, but runs or ambles quickly to try to save them. And yet I also want to stand in a field of glowing tall grass, my red beret at a jaunty tilt, taking brush to canvas, painting that same cut, that cry, into being more than it wants, but likely less than it deserves. I want to be the one afraid to die, who almost dies. Is he trying to die? But doesn't just yet. The one who jumps from the plane for real, and afterwards, as if it might mean something more, or else, writes a poem about it.
Well, very interesting, Matt. That part about not wanting to die, but didn't not want to die, like a dream. There's some dreaming still left in the tank. That's a fascinating thing to say and think about in that poem. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you, and thanks for you guys are like just ducks on the surface, just with kids in the background doing this and looking as calm as you guys are. It without medication involved is kind of miraculous. So just thank you for doing what you guys do.
Oh,
really
thank you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Definitely our pleasure. I keep peeking to see if Katie's going to come back, and I hear random shrieks of anger. So I don't know if she will be, but we'll see.
luck.
We'll see. Maybe something can placate. But anyway, thanks so much, Matt. Yeah, that was Matt Joseph with skydiving. And let's go next to Gerald Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, Jared. Great to see you.
Good to see you. So I did The Ultimate Poem is Impersonal. Towering above fallen acorns, the oak stands lighter. In a poem of two images, poetry is not image one, nor is it image two. Poetry is the unspoken relationship between the images. Just so, the poem is neither the experience confessed by the poet, nor is it the experience induced in the reader. The poem is the field that acts on them both. The oak that stands in my front yard, watching the rapid growing of my son, caused the poem. But it's not the oak in the poem any more than I am my son, who has his own life and character, and is, because he is more than his efficient causes. Nor is the oak in the poem the oak now standing in your yard, dear reader. It's an impersonal oak, relating to every oak that ever has or ever will stand, and every possible oak, and immanent in none of them. When every oak has fallen, the poem oak will stand, and leaf, and drop its leaves. Squirrels bury acorns, forgotten acorns become oaks.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, well, I love that concept. Almost like an essay, but a very informative, fascinating essay, too. And then the two duo stitch haiku, I think you'd call them. They're definitely, I love that towering above fallen acorns. The oak stands lighter, especially. That's really, really cool stuff, Jared. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, I'm glad. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, Gerald Campbell with The Ultimate Poem is Impersonal. A lot to chew on, a lot to think about there. All right, let's go next to Leslie Ann Schechterson. Hey, Leslie Ann, great to see you. Thanks for coming back.
Oh, it's that was a great interview. Man, great questions.
Oh, great. Well, thanks.
Learning so much. Okay, well, I decided to go kind of funny. So, Ode to Stink Bugs, personal enemy number one. Stinky, stinky bugs everywhere, on the walls, in my hair, on the ceiling way up there. Crawling, hiding in every crack. Spray them out, but they still come back. Time to launch the full attack. Chalk every hole and crevasse. Stink them out with oil of peppermint grass and watch them scramble out en masse. Clean for a day, oh yes. We swept up the dead body mess of those ubiquitous crawling house pests. All gone. It's been a week as I gloat over my bug removing technique before spotting a fast little black streak. Come out for some bright warm sun, you ugly sucker. Squirming won't help, you miniature bucker. I've got you now, you motherfucker.
Well, there's a lot of energy in that one. I love the reading of it, especially Leslie Ann. Yeah, and moving from, it moved from California to South Texas not too long ago to be with Katie, and a lot more bugs here than we have in the desert region of Southern California, so I can kind of relate too. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah. That was Leslie Ann Schechterson with Ode to Stink Bugs, personal enemy number 1. Although I'm sure she'll enjoy the Ode to a Bug Guy from the current issue of Rattle, which, do I have a copy? Yeah, the current issue of Rattle right here, which includes the Rattle Poetry Prize winners, one of which is the Bug Guy poem. Anyway, let's go to another poet. And next up, we've got Tina Denniclaw.
Hi.
Hey, Tina. I'm good. How you doing?
We're doing okay. We played hooky today.
Oh, nice.
Not really, but yeah, we got to be home today. So, I picked up on the thing about a shared experience, for universal. So that's what brought this to mind. And so, Ode to the ER. What is the worst that can happen? Make sure it doesn't. When the injury is awful, detachment might be the kindest thought. Focus on the task at hand. What is in your hand? Read it to the room. Drug, concentration, dose, volume. Let everyone confirm the choice and the math. Know the protocols. Anticipate with calm, alert. Move smoothly and quickly. What's in your hand? Every moment of delay, more brain dies, more heart dies, more life slips away. Everyone holds their breath when the tube begins to intubate. The patient is already paralyzed, not breathing. It's a dance against death. What's in your hand? Celebrate the wins quietly, internally, then turn and face the next case coming through the doors.
Well, another interesting poem, Ode to the ER. Thanks so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. That was Tina Denniclaw with Ode to the ER. And Katie is back. Hey, Katie.
Some heated exchanges during the Lego putting together out there.
Oh,
No,
is
actually, they're not. I mean, they never argue. That's literally true. As Charlotte was getting very
She's
spirited.
Getting frustrated about the Legos?
the reindeers, yeah.
Okay.
There are
well.
only 4 in the Lego set. Let it be a lesson to you all.
There's supposed to be 9.
I know, it is. I mean, I agree with her.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, well, I'm glad you're back. Glad we got it settled down a little bit.
For now.
For now. Okay. So next up, let's go to Stephen Croft. A few poets left. Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Hey, Tim and Katie.
Hey.
Hey, yeah, great to see you.
Thank you. So I did my best to interpret the prompt, and I've decided this poem will be the second poem in my next book, which is going to be all war poetry. The first poem is called 912, and this will be the second poem.
Okay, cool.
And I had the idea of how when a soldier is deployed, it's a different sort of leaving than, say, going to college or going on a mission trip, because there's the possibility you may never return. So it might be more poignant, at least that sort of thing was for me. So this is Ode to My Neighborhood on Leaving. On a last walk of the neighborhood, I turn into the Little League ballpark I pass every day because I want to see everything now. Staring at each tree, I slowly walk the evening streets. Through the chain link, young basemen crouch to the aluminum clinks of a coach's bat, and I want to stay, hang from the fence and smell the clay, the new cut grass, wait for popcorn and hot dogs to float invisible in the air of dusk as warm-ups end, bleachers fill, banks of lights on the high poles blink on, erase growing shadows. Just stay and feel each inning crawl on its cheers and moans further into the warm night. But the dryer is off by now. Time to turn back, stuff newly washed clothes into a duffel, say a soldier's goodbyes, head to Fort Stewart for a midnight formation. Tomorrow we stand in the parade field sun for a senator's send-off, feel the last embraces of family as we board buses for the airfield for Iraq. I just want to stay here among the quiet houses, warmth of color from TV screens glowing in windows as street lights buzz and power on. I stop at the corner, the Lutheran church, my breathing, a muttered regret of leaving. In the Christ window, lit by a ground light, Jesus among heaven's clouds blesses my longing with scarred hands.
Well, thanks so much for sharing and capturing that,
Yeah,
Stephen.
definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was Stephen Croft with Ode to My Neighborhood on Leaving. And let's go next to Jackie Chow. Hey, Jackie, are you there? Got to unmute. There you go.
Here. Hi, you guys.
Hey, yeah, great to see you again. Yeah.
Yes, great to see you too. Okay, let me find the poem. It's gonna take about 2 seconds, I hope. Okay, here it is.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. An ode to love. Your father singing a serenade, a mother cutting along the shape of my infantile camel drawing and taping it by my crib. You're an older sister sifting through Barbies with me at the toy store to choose the one with the prettiest face. You're the hoarse voice attempting the gentlest lullaby, the frostbitten hands tucking a baby to sleep with the softest blankets, the gnarled fingers rubbing lotion on a child's skin. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful images in that. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jackie.
Thank you for having this Rattlecast.
Oh, yeah,
it's
definitely.
really great to hear everybody's poetry.
Yeah, our pleasure. Well, thanks so much for joining and sharing yours. Yeah. It was Jackie Chow with an ode to love. And next, let's go to Mary Lisa D. Diminishus.
Hello.
Hi,
Hey, Mary Lisa. Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, it is.
Hi, good to see everybody again. All right, I have it's a little more abstract than what I usually do. But I think I nailed it. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, very cool.
It's called
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Interrogatory. Do swallows look like teardrops? Do you swallow teardrops? Is your mother's kitchen lemon or coffee? Your mother, sour, dark. Is your mother's kitchen lemon or coffee? Your mother, bright, light, and sweet. Lemon or coffee? Mother, intriguing, creamy, bittersweet, cloudy, lukewarm, hot, with floating pulp unprocessed grounds. Do teardrops flock? Do dewdrops drop to rise again into the ether? At the bottom of the cup, mother, rising. Do teardrops swallow you?
Well, very interesting poem, Mary Lisa. A very big departure from the way you usually write. It's interesting to see. Yeah.
Was there something in particular that inspired you to write like this? I mean, I think I'm saying this as a fellow maximalist poet.
Yes. Because I did want it to be universal and to work for any mom.
Right.
And not just my own relationship with my mother. So I wanted to like offer alternatives and it just kind of seems like a lot of what may be at the bottom of our cups rising sometimes. And that could be a good or bad.
Oh, well, really neat.
I wanted it to fit like all the moms, you know?
Oh, cool. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
All right.
Thanks, Mary Lisa.
Yeah, it worked. I got skinny.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you guys. Good night.
Thanks. Night.
Thanks, yeah. Yeah, so that was Mary Lisa D. Diminishes with an interrogatory. Yeah, really interesting use of the fragmentation there. All right, and let's go to last. We're going to read Ted Bernal-Guevara's poem for him. And Ted sent us this. First of all, I said, Dear Tim and Katie, there are 27,000 stenographers in the country. This one makes a little more effort. Interesting. Okay, Ode to the Mute Stenographer of South Carolina. Here's this poem by Ted Bernal-Guevara. He happens to be the fastest one at his trade, certainly in his state, but lawyers wonder how could he hear and catch all when there are so much thrown across the courtroom. Pleads and whines, truths and half-truths, lies and baseless accusations, but it was his beloved mother who first discovered his hearing was fine and had sent him to the Stenographic Institute in Buffalo, New York, the best in the country. Now his hearing is so acute that his mother swears he can record legal spats before they're spoken. And in January 2021, during the Pox-Hyman versus South Carolina case, it was his pattering on the machine that the judge had noticed superseding the argument between the prosecution and the defense. The judge stood up behind this bench, raised his arms to halt everything in motion. He, the stenographer, paused, seeing the judge was a little irate. Read me the last 3 sentences, the judge ordered. The stenographer looked up and muted, Who, me? Since he couldn't speak, the bailiff was prompted to look at the machine. The bailiff read, Have you reached the verdict? Yes, we have, Your Honor. In the case of Pox, the bailiff looked up in shock and said, Judge, he's way ahead of us. He's finished. The judge became perplexed, and when he uttered to the bailiff, How do you mean? The stenographer maundered off, Not guilty. Well, that is an interesting imaginative daydream there, Ted. The Ode to the Mute Stenographer of South Carolina. Yeah, very interesting. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. That was Ted's Poem of the Week. And that's going to wrap up the prompt lines for tonight. Thanks, everybody who shared poems as always. Now we're going to close out with some haiku. What have you got for us, Katie?
I have
this one right here?
Yeah, okay. The distance between yellow and red, tornado warning.
Yeah, I forgot. In my brain fog, I forgot that this even happened this week.
It was this week,
But
right?
it was this week, yeah,
okay.
where it was like the day before Thanksgiving, right? Or something?
2 days.
2 days? It was Monday? I don't know.
But
yeah, we were in a grocery store, and then there all this cell phones went off everywhere.
Yeah.
Because there was a tornado warning.
Yeah, it was scary.
And then we looked at the report thing, and it said it was going to be where we were in 10 minutes. So we said,
well, we don't want to be where we are.
We don't want to be where we
minutes.
are, so we've
so
abandoned
we weren't.
that. Yeah, we abandoned that shopping cart temporarily and came back later to buy things. Anyway, yeah, that was a cool, the distance between yellow and red, tornado warning. I like that. And you wrote that in the car, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. While you were driving and I was pulling up the storm chaser on my phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, I'm glad we didn't die from the tornado.
I am too.
Yeah. All right. Well, and then mine, I mentioned, being kind of foggy. I couldn't hold a thought long enough to write a whole poem, but this haiku made it before I forgot it. And it was this. Almost remembrane foghorn. Here you go. Almost remembering
That's one to send to
Foghorn.
Heliosparrow.
There you go. I'm trying to get in, I can't, not all of us can have 19 poems in Heliosparrow, but hopefully Richard will take one of mine if I make it weird enough.
He'd like that for sure.
Anyway, that is my haiku for this week. And that is the show for this week. Now, next week's prompt on the Rattlecast is going to be what, Katie Dozier?
So I was trying to look at, how can we write the kind of poems that will be really fun to read after Billy Collins is on next week? And so I kind of distilled how I feel about a lot of his poems, which you guys know I'm a big Billy Collins fan, so I say this with love. Write a poem that begins at the kitchen table and interrupts itself, which is something I think we see in a lot of Billy Collins poetry.
We definitely do. And I think also, if you look at that A.M. Jester book, the Billy Collins Experience, I think like almost everyone starts that way. So that's going to be a fun prompt. Write a poem that begins at the kitchen table and interrupts itself. That's next week's prompt. And the guest, as we already mentioned, is none other than Billy Collins. Oop, that's not him. Billy Collins coming up. He's got a new book, Dog Show. We saw him just last week in Austin reading, and everybody asked or told him about their own dogs, which was a lot of fun at the end. So if you have dog stories, please, I don't know, hold them or something. But yeah, his new book, Dog Show, comes with some really cool artwork too, some watercolors of dogs, and it's an anthology of his poems about dogs. We've talked about that, but of course, poetry and a whole lot more. With Billy Collins. And
also the only book that's been featured on the Rattlecast that's also on Oprah's favorite things Christmas list, I would say probably. It's exciting to see a poetry book that's actually selling. And this is actually selling.
That is. And they're real poems too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So so check out Dog Show. Billy Collins, the guest next week on the Rattlecast. It's episode 321. The regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.